It's the land of mystical wonder, a land that's somewhat on fire. And you ever hear about polar bears anymore? Or is that just not a thing?
I know people come to where I work and ask where our polar bears are located. But other than that, no, I haven't. I mean, I've seen images of them. My manager actually has done some work, did some training with them. So, well, not training with them, but she's been in their environment. So, like, other than that, whenever I think of polar bear, I think of my boss. So,
I've seen penguins in Hawaii, so I'm trying to figure out why. Like some
nope.
people, it's never a dumb question to like walk up to like a zoo and be like, "Where are your cobras?" or "Where are your this?" and like, "Oh, we don't
Right.
have that here." It's like, well, you never know. Sometimes you might be in like I was at a hotel and they had penguins as an attraction thing, like a little pond with penguins, and I'm like, "Fucking, is that penguins in a hotel at in Hawaii?" I'm in Hawaii right now. I'm not in the Arctic, but they're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Okay."
It's always wild. I mean, the zoo I work at used to have penguins and polar bears back in the day. And it's a nice little gauge to see how long people how long people have been at the zoo. We haven't had we haven't we still have our elephants. We haven't had our polar bears or our penguins for about since like the early to mid 2000s, and people still ask like, "Hey, where did your polar bears go?" It's like we haven't had them forever,
I haven't
but you
been
can
here in 20 years.
but you can see our bald eagles where they're at now.
Okay, what do you classify as a zoo animal though? Because like there's a free zoo, I think, like in my state, but it's like a good maybe hour away from where I live in Ocean City. It's in Salisbury, which is like kind of like if you mention the word Salisbury, people are like you're from Salisbury because that's like where people get stabbed and it's
Oh
where I
boy.
went to college and so, but when you say like the zoo and it's like, well, it's a free zoo. It's like, okay, well, it's a zoo's a zoo. It's gonna be fun. You go there and they have like geese and as one of the enclosures, and I'm like, I can fucking see this when I leave my house. They cross the road and they if I could if
You
I
good?
could, yeah, I'm good. If I could end one animal or at least move it to a location where that would only be the place for that animal, and that would be geese. And then there's only one thing I don't like about them, and
What's
that's
that?
not that they're vicious. It's that they have this personality that is I don't give a fuck about anything you have planned for the day. I'm going to do whatever I want. When they cross the road, and Ron White has a joke on it. He goes, they cross the road with such confidence where it's like, what the fuck are you looking at with the head nodding and shit?
Yep.
That gets me because I sat behind somebody late for work for 45 minutes as they stayed parked and waited for every single little geese to cross the road. And then as soon as the last little baby one got over, I'm like, finally, fucking something happened or a honk went off in the distance and all the birds flew right back over. And I was like, fucking go, go. I don't give a shit anymore. Like it just got me so heated where I was like, they can fly at any moment to cross that road, but they want to walk and they don't give a shit if your car is coming at them. They're like, I don't care.
I feel like it's just I feel it's a power move.
It's a
There's
power
like
grab.
I know you're gonna stop for me, so I can do whatever I want.
See,
We have geese.
I don't want them to die because like I read there's an article of my town that we had a too much of a geese population because we had I think one winter like 3 years ago where like the snow never came. So they
Is
never
this the one where your town poisoned them all, and then
you fucking listened to my show. Thank you.
well, you mentioned it the last time I was on, so that story is stuck in my brain.
It's so horrible. But I'm like, I don't want that to happen. Like, can we just isolate them? Like, I bet if you look at Area 51, they probably have like Bigfoot or they have something in there that we haven't seen before.
So just move all the geese to Area 51.
Yeah. I mean, it would make the whole like raiding Area 51 be a lot less like cool when they find out, like, yeah, we got into Area 51. What's in here? It's just a bunch
A
of
bunch of
geese
geese.
shit everywhere.
Actually, the geese are what's protecting Area 51 from the outsiders.
Yeah.
Ah,
Careful. You're going to hit my giant theory, which is like, have you ever come across an animal and then they're always protecting something? And it seems like this is going to be maybe a life or death situation if I go to whatever this thing is protecting. It could be its eggs or it could be a secret treasure.
so
And
now instead of like if there's a rainbow, instead of a leprechaun, I'm going to see a geese just sitting on a pile of gold. That's where my mind's going to go to now. Thank you for that.
a geese on a pile of gold is more believable than a small little Irish man with a green hat on.
You're right. You're right about that. I don't know. I still have that hope that maybe one day I'll find one.
What's one thing you want to believe to be true and one thing you don't want to believe?
I like to believe that people could be empathetic, and I like to think that not every person in the world's an asshole, but here I am.
Damn. Um, oh no, I was thinking like if you could pick like a cryptid or something like that, but you hit me with that empathy thing right in the
Yep.
like a hard whop to the face. It's like when you get to your dentist and he's like, "You don't have any cavities." You're like, "What? I've been just fucking eating candy all day. It's all I eat." It's like, "Where do you live?" Who's that one? Oh no, I'm gonna blank on his name. Welp, about time it happened on my show. This is when I come out to say I have dementia.
Oh boy.
Okay, if I was gonna offer you $1 billion to do
Okay.
anything you want with it,
Oh boy.
anything, you could donate it. I don't care. You better donate to a
Okay.
really good charity though, like the people that can't see the color red, because I think some charities always get donated to. Like if you talk about like for uneducated youth or for I'm like, I don't see the money helping out Africa. So fucking donate
Yep.
that money to somewhere that actually might help. And that's with helping with maybe people who don't have hands read braille with their face.
I see that. If I had $1 billion, I would set some of it aside to save, like a quarter, like about 10% of it away to save, that keep building. The rest of it, I'd probably just end up giving away. Get just, oh, you want to go to college for this? All right, here's some money for you. You set up a school here, some money for you. It would depend on what region it would be. Just be like, you have a really cool project you want to try out. Here you go. Here's a chance for you. Stuff like that. Maybe habitat rebuilding.
Do you ever get nervous with like saving up your money? Like I have a good amount saved up, but I get nervous. I always check it every single day to make sure it didn't go down a penny or didn't like I just didn't randomly get money added to my account without me knowing it. Like I don't have the apps on my phone to be able to like
Right.
check my bank account. So I actually have to physically go to the place and check it. And they're like, why don't you have it set up? I'm like, I forgot my username, my password, all that shit. And every time I change it, it's just a fucking hassle and I always forget. So I don't write it down because I'm not that type of guy and I don't
Yep.
save it in my phone. So I get so nervous because people are talking about like now we're using cash less because the pandemic. It's now on card. Well, how long until the card thing is something completely different where it's with a chip or it's with something where it gets into the cryptocurrency thing. I was talking to a crypto, one of the Bitcoin, all that type of shit.
Yep.
And he was talking about like it's all like you're just a number in a digital wallet. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, your money, all that shit can be gone with a snap of some dude's fingers. Some dude could just take that all away from you. You could have zero in your bank account. He goes, you are a digital wallet, basically. Everything that you have, everything that you earn, that could all be gone in a second. Someone can take out of your digital wallet. It's going to eventually become like the main stage of currency. There's not going to be cash. And I'm like, it's in our Bill of Rights to have cash. Like we're able to have cash. He goes, but during the pandemic, did anybody give a shit about your Bill of Rights? And I'm like, that's true. Yeah. A couple questions. I watched a couple of news people ask people at conferences during the pandemic and ask Fauci, like, hey, what about our freedom to do whatever this is? And he's like, yeah, we didn't even take the Bill of Rights in consideration. He quoted saying, I don't have the authority to speak on this. And I'm like, what?
I mean, honestly, if we already started moving away from credit card, I mean, you can go on your phone now and just boop, Samsung Pay, Galaxy Pay, Apple Pay, all that stuff. I mean, you just load your card up there, so you don't even have to carry your card on you. Just, I got my
That
phone on me. Boop.
that's good if you miss it. Like someone at my gym, for instance, to scan in, he grabbed this picture of his ID card on his phone, and he's like, "I figured he left it at his house because it happens.
Yep.
People like check me in. I'm like, sure, and I'll just check their name in if they forget their card or they have it on a separate pair of keys." He goes
Right.
to scan his phone for 5 minutes. I'm like, "I got you," and I grabbed his phone to scan it. And as I'm doing it for a minute, he goes, "Well, I just got my card." And he just grabs his card and scan. I'm like, "What the fuck?"
Right.
What? I was like, why? I literally just put his phone on the counter and just walked away. Like, I don't know what you want me to do here.
I know in retail, when I was leaving that industry, the company I was going, like I was working for, was starting to go towards Apple Pay and all that, and they had their card on that, and they, oh, it's not working. Well, I'll just pull out my wallet. It's like, why do you just pull out your wallet in the 5 minutes you were in line waiting to come up to me. You knew you were gonna have to use your card. Why not just have it ready for me?
Well, why is cash like now that's so weird to have? Like it's now been programmed to use card now. Like back in the day, I always used to use cash, and now it's like now I have my card, and now it's like that's just so much easier than actually having cash in my wallet anymore. And it's like it actually took the system to catch up a little bit now. If you notice, it was always when you did cash purchases, they'd be like, "Do you want to donate whatever a little bit of money to this
Right.
certain charity?" Well, now it's now with cards too. Cards are, and that just I asked her, I was like, "I've never seen these screens come up. Like, did you just start donating?" And they're like, "No, no, no, cards for like the past couple of months has now been implementing to ask the donation thing when they round up your money." And I was like, wait, so that wasn't like we've been using cards for years now. And I'm like, so
Right.
nobody was donating because it's all been transferred over to card. They're like, well, during the pandemic, I mean, cash just stopped becoming a thing. So they just switched it over to now you can do it on your card too. And I'm like, fuck. When is it going to be like that's the weird thing is cards going to be weird. You're going to have to scan with like sign your soul over. It's like for fucking coffee syrup at Home Goods? What?
Yeah, sounds about right. I mean, hopefully we don't get to a level like that. I still like carrying my card and all that. Just I feel like cars is more simpler and easier for people, and we know how people have gotten over time. They feel smarter and feel like they need to use less energy to do other stuff. So whoever's convenient and easy, that's what they'll gravitate towards.
Do you think that people use less energy nowadays and that doesn't get funneled somewhere else? Or do you feel like, because I look at like, if you stop doing one thing, or like, let's say you stop eating healthy or going the extra mile to walk
Yep.
the extra 20 100 feet, and I think it starts, it's a slow diminish, I would say. Like if you look at like the human population compared to what we used to do back in the day compared to what we do now, there's a lot of stuff that does the ease of access for us to do easier, but there's other avenues that we've kind of explored that are now faster and better than what was back in the day. I was talking to us, my buddy Steve, who's a Spartan history guy. It was a
Yep.
podcast on it. We were talking about the evolution of man. In some ways we've evolved drastically, not physically. I'd say physically we're still probably the same. Our minds have just over exceeded anything that would have been even plausible back in the day, but in some ways we're technically, nutrition wise, people go, well, nutrition's better. And I'm like, is it though? Is nutrition better? Because people are experiencing diabetes at a higher rate than ever before. People are obese at a higher rate than ever before. Back in the day, you might have gotten parasite from food, but
Right.
besides that, there was no like, they were pretty fit back in the day compared to now, where it's like, I guess that fear of survival, that thing that you need to eat and you need to make sure you're healthy, to make sure you can catch your prey and all this, has kind of been thrown out the window. So now people let their body just diminish to shit. Cause I mean, it's 1,000 times easier to sit on the chair and watch Netflix than it is to go fucking hunt down a boar.
Well, but not only that, now we have all this processed food. Food's been delivered to people in an easier way, and
It's delicious.
I mean,
I
I love
love
me
the
too.
GMOs.
I love me some good Taco Bell. I'm just saying,
That's
but
my fucking fast food I met Jesus at. I will eat that to the day I die.
it's so good, especially now that the potatoes back. Oh, thank you, potato bowls.
Making a shirt. Stay tuned.
But no, so we have all, we have processed and we have fast food. Not only that, now people just assume that, oh, it's healthy because it must have gone through some of these tests and all that. So people don't actually, you've talked about this before in your other episodes, like people don't actually look, see where their food's from or where it's coming from. They don't prep it like they normally would, like humans have back in the day. And back then people actually knew what they were putting in their body. Nowadays, like it could be this, it could be this. Do I have energy? All right, then it's fine.
I think it's difficult because I guess repercussions, much like we can probably talk about the environment, for instance, the repercussions for the environment, they nobody really takes effect into it until it's a completely at the red line, where it's like you should
Yep.
have took the fucking steps 10, 15 years ago. Nowadays people do all these things to it and they expect that, oh, we have the technology to be able to fix it, which we don't. Which I'm not pro electric car. I don't really give a
All right.
shit what you drive. I think there's better things that we could be tackling to even change conservation efforts when it comes to animals and stuff. There are other
Yep.
things that we should be doing, such as like, why do we need to keep building building more homes. We're not having an influx of people moving right now, especially with the travel going on. I mean, my town just built another apartment complex thing, and they're still building hotel after hotel after hotel. And I'm like, what? Nobody's traveling though. So it's like very, very weird to see that your priority are is like, why are you still doing this? And they're like, well, because that's what we did last year. And I'm like, but yeah, because every year you've done it during this month, you've built something. Does that make sense to keep doing it even if a fucking pandemic hits? And as you start to realize that we're in these routines or these ruts, much like people have their own personal routines, the world has its own personal routine. And I'm going to toss this theory at you. So you're an environmental guy, I'd say, right?
Yeah, yeah, I would say so.
Oh, you just fucking teach it, you know. Um,
Yeah,
do you think the Earth, much like if you look at a person, for instance, when you look at an alive person compared to a dead person, there's an energy, there's something missing, which you can probably chalk up to be the soul. Yeah.
I would say there's vibrations or at least an earth, like a connection that we
Yeah.
all share with the planet. Yeah.
But so do you think that when you die and that energy is gone, that like you can look at someone and be like, the light's not in their eyes anymore, whether you want to call that's the soul or whatever you want to call it,
Sure.
energy, do you think that residuates back down to the earth? Do you think that ends up the earth is just this giant ball of energy? Kind of goes to the global brain theory. If you look from space down at the earth, you can see if you took everybody's like all the electric frequencies from people's brains compared to our satellites, everything. If you looked at it as you could see the electrical impulses and everything like a current, you could kind of see what looks to be the nerves of a brain from the earth being the actual
Right.
solid part of it and everything else be the nerves. Do you think that when someone dies that their energy residuates back into the earth? Like I'm starting to look at that a little bit more like the state of you as a person is kind of correlated a little bit like the state of the earth. Everyone is kind of on like this alert, this type of like weird on edge societies on
Right.
edge. And I think that's because the planet is also in some points on edge as well, too, much like how the water can reflect into the sky, blue. Same thing with people. You kind of reflect your earth a little bit. You know, if you start treating the earth better, you treat yourself better with better
Right.
food, you're going to feel better and be nicer to more people rather than if you eat a bunch of donuts, feel like shit, and you start treating people like shit. The earth, it just seems like instead of living off positive energy, it's been living off negative energy from everyone experiencing negative things. So now it's kind of residuating back into the earth where it's acting negatively. You know, there's more things that are happening now to the earth that haven't been happening before. It's not as drastic as some news places make it like tomorrow fucking earthquake's going to take the whole country into the ground. You're like, oh my fucking god, I better fucking recycle. No, it's more like it's gonna come, but when is it gonna come? That's very, very hard to tell.
I think I think the earth does have, I think once we pass on, whatever, you're everyone's different. This comes down to different belief systems and all. I think personally that once you pass on, that the earth takes back what it gave you. So I think the earth shares a piece of itself with everyone. And that's why when environmental events happen or different things happen in the world, we all feel it in some level or another. I feel like the earth shares a piece of itself with us. And whatever your preference is, the other half of you comes from either universe or a higher being, whatever the case may be. And then once you pass, those split and it goes back to whatever half got borrowed from the earth goes back to the earth, and the other half goes to whatever your belief system is. So that's why I think personally nowadays, that's where my thoughts gone now. But I mean, if you think of it, that makes more sense because if you look at places that have mass environmental damages and warfare going on at the same time, the environment's been torn up and the people are also torn up too. So there is that connection on one level or another from people to the earth. And when the earth is going through major events, the civilization that occupies that landscape is also going through a bunch of different events.
I think it's fair to say that if you probably talk to the average person, it's a bit conflicted with how if there's going to be a good interaction or a bad interaction. And I
Hmm.
think a lot of that can not only boil down to your nutrition, but also boil down to the state of where you're living, like maybe your home, for instance. It even boils down even farther than that to your environment or the community you're around. If you live in a very shitty area, you're not going to probably be the nicest person, mostly
Right.
because you're a little bit upset because your environment is kind of making you upset. When
Right.
people want to change their way that they think or change their personality or get rid of baggage or get rid of bad clutter, the first step that people usually do is clean out your house or clean out your
Right.
room or clean out things around you. Like for instance, if you have things around you from an ex and you're like, I don't want this around. Everything's reminding me of her. It's like, no shit, because you have all of her stuff. You're
Tough.
using her shampoo. Like, you got to get rid of all that and start over fresh because there's going to be subtle triggers that are going to bring you back to that state. Same thing when
Right.
people move out of maybe a low poverty neighborhood. When you see like Bill Gates compared to where he started, compared to where he's at now, nothing like before. It's a fucking
Right.
complete change because he never wanted to experience what those lows were again. He wanted to only experience the highs. He wanted to change everything. People that are born in one place end up moving and then maybe later down the line end up returning, but they usually don't want to live around something they've lived around their whole entire life that has been ingrained into them. They end up might returning to it later down the road, but it's always a change of scenery because you want something new. You
Right.
know, it's interesting because if you look at Chernobyl, for instance, Chernobyl is a desolate wasteland just because of what happened there, the experiments, life. I think it's now like they talked about, what is it, fucking glow in the dark wolves or some shit that some dude did a documentary down in Chernobyl and he was talking about these fucking wolves that would glow. And he's like, what the hell is that? And it's like they're like had some type of like residue from living in that area for so long
Yeah.
on them. And I'm like, fucking that area, if you walk in there, you can sense, like just like walking on a war or battlefield, that this
Right.
area is damaged. There's hurt in this area. Now, if you relate that to where you're living, if there's hurt in your area, if there's pain in the places that you live, when you're in a neighborhood, but your town just experienced a massive explosion, my heart goes out to the people like my friend Dr. Serene Nemi, who's in Beirut and they had that giant fucking mass explosion. She was like, yeah, it's still not back to 100%. People are still, picking up pieces after this. And it's been months and months and months. It's, it's, it's more than just what's going on in your life. It's also what's going on in the impact of the world. When something happens so close to you, no matter if it involves you or not, it still involves you because it's in your area. It's something that you drive past. I think 2 weeks ago, I watched a person's house burn down. Now, for my first thought, I'm driving and I see all this black smoke. I'm like, well, there's someone starting a fucking fire. And as I'm driving, I notice there's a house on fire just happened. Fires are going out of control. Fire truck just pulls up, but there's a person screaming with their fucking hands on their face, crying because their house is burning down. And I'm like, fuck, like I could feel that. Like, and that's
Right.
just not empathy factor. That's more of like, this is happening around me. These are people that live around you. You don't ever want to see it. Makes you take rationalization into your own home. Make sure your oven's fucking turned off. I was checking
Right.
it twice before I left the house, even though I hadn't used it in a fucking week. There are things that you start to notice when things happen around you that kind of wake you up to a situation. So I'm wondering, what is the best possible way to hold on to that wakes you up rather than 2 weeks? Much like the pandemic, when it first started, everyone was getting groceries for their neighbors. And I said it, I called it. It's going to last 2 fucking weeks. And
Yep.
that's going to be fucking done. People are going to revert back to the way they were before, which eventually now it's like, put your fucking mask on. It's like, all right,
People are nasty about stuff now.
it's like they're back to normal. So I'm figuring out that's not normal. That's not the real, that's something pushing us to that point. And we talk about a mental health that is on the rise right now. What is the steps? What is causing that foot on the gas pedal? Because we're tackling the physical pedal. We're not attacking the foot that's applying the pressure.
On the pressure.
So what in your mind, or what do you think that could possibly be? For me, I look at it like maybe it's a lack of community. It's very, very hard when you're isolated for so long to not, you need to be in touch with people around you, even if it's just like, hey, how you doing, Jim? I'm doing all right. Just that simple thing kind of it does a little bit.
Yeah, it's broadening yourself back up. I mean, think about when the world went to quarantine originally, we were told what to stay within the household and don't venture out, like don't visit people and all other stuff. So that was the loss of connection. Slowly we're getting back, but at work, we're starting to have a good amount of people come back into the zoo, like around 1,000 people an hour is our capacity. And there's so many complaints from guests coming up or whatever. It's two-sided, but it seems like we get a lot more of the negative stuff, at least everywhere. It's like, oh,
Really?
it's too crowded, but it's like this is nothing. Like I remember working here back in the day when there'd be around 2,000+ people in the zoo an hour, and like we'd have 10,000 people a day. Like I remember those days, and this is nothing compared to that. But yet people are more angry. So I think it's just people aren't used to seeing other people, but we live on a planet that has 7 billion people on it. The chance of you running into a large crowd of people is pretty high. So it's like, I think once things start opening back up and we have large groups again or big venues again, then people will go back to, all right, I remember what this is like now. I can readjust. It's
Do
like
you
coming out of prison.
yeah, do you think that's an issue though? Like, why the fuck are you going to a zoo and worrying about the people? If you're that afraid, why don't you just stay the fuck home?
I feel people think that it's not going to be as busy. And I feel that people are still in the mentality that everyone's staying home. So like, all right, everyone's home, so I can go out and do stuff. But that's not the case. I mean, we're outside, so you're outside getting that air, getting that sunshine and all that. And you're seeing things that you normally don't. And people overthink that. So when they get there and they see that, there's a good amount of people inside this area, they're like, all right, I'm going to leave now because now I feel uncomfortable being here. And then they run an email about it or they go on social media about it. And it's like, guys, just this is nothing. Just this is pre-COVID stuff, which is only a year ago. So
Do you think people get attached to the fear narrative? I feel like that's what it's starting to become, is that fear narrative. It's like a lot of people were so happy when they got to sit at home and not have to go to work, and they actually, but after a while it got old. But there are some people that, like, once they went back to work, it was like, I'd rather be back to where it was before. Like, even the first night, I remember sitting in my car when everything was going to be shutting down at 6 p.m. in my
yep,
town. I was like, fuck, this is so weird. Like, it's like the purge. It's like everyone has to be locked inside of their home when after the certain time you can't go out, and if you do, you're gonna be in trouble. It was so like fucking a little bit
weird.
exciting and weird. Like, in a way, it was like, oh my God, shit's gonna be shut down. It's never happened before. This is unprecedented time. Literally, like I remember like for instance, when bath salts was becoming a huge thing, I was
Yep,
playing Dead Island on my Xbox, and my dad goes, I want you to lock the back door and not go out tonight. And I'm like, fucking, at 13, I could be out till 2 o'clock in the morning because my dad always knew if he gave me
right,
that freedom, I would never want to pursue that. So it's just never a big thing. I had the option. I just didn't feel like doing it ever. And he
right.
goes, I've never in my entire life seen another person eat another person's face. That's like a fucking zombie scenario. And he
Yep.
goes, I'm scared of where it's going to turn out. So just stay inside the house. That fear aspect was fucking thrilling, where it was like, fuck, we're living in an unprecedented time. That can get turned into a very, very, very bad thing when people get conditioned to that way of living. People nowadays don't seem like they want the pandemic to end. They want it to keep going. I think we all want it to end. It's the whole point of vaccines and all this type of
Right.
stuff. But there are some people that like this fucking, I don't have to go to work. I want this to keep going as long as possible. I'm getting free fucking money, all this type of shit. I'm like, yeah, but we can't. That doesn't
It's not
fucking work like
sustainable.
that. Yeah.
I think it's different for every person. I know when the pandemic first started, it was kind of my avenue out of retail. And I went back to retail once during COVID, and I didn't like the way that any part of it was being handled, like the way the company was handling stuff or like the greater mall I worked in. So that was my exit out of it. And it also gave me a chance to explore and to grow further at the zoo I'm at now. So it was different opportunities, but I do see the point where I think people got used to some of the opportunities they were afforded or they could take advantage of. And with the pandemic starting to end, they feel like they have to go back to their old way of life. And it's like, no, you don't have to go totally back to that old way of life. If there are pieces that you like that you did now, then go ahead and find a way of incorporating that into your routine or what you want to do going forward. And for some people, they were able to achieve their goal or whatever. So, that's the other part. It's like keep making goals for yourself. So, still do the positive stuff that you did during quarantine. Just you have to find a way to now make it sustainable now.
There's a person at my work she's just an elderly lady that comes in to work out. It's not even really working out. She really just points out anything that we're missing. And then like one of those, you get this probably at the zoo. Someone goes, "Did you know that this was happening?" And you're like, "Thank you. I'll keep that into consideration." And really in your
Yep.
mind, you're like, "Fuck off." But she comes in, she goes, the paper towel thing is not working again. It's the third day in a row. And I was like, I know for a fact I fixed it, but it's a broken thing. So it always ends up getting stuck.
Right.
But she always, every time, like immediately comes in, checks it. And it's just like looking at you, like making sure you're doing your job. And it's like just people that have nothing better to do just to try and act like they have a sense of authority or power. So anybody goes to a customer service job, you kind of know there are some people that aren't going to like it when you're telling them something. They're going to cuss you out. They're going to call you a piece of shit if you say no to them or something like
Right.
that. But there's people that want to police other people. And I've heard more and more stories now with like in my town, for instance, they said you don't have to wear masks outside anymore. And I'm like, um, I've been doing something illegal this whole entire fucking time. I thought it was only indoors that you had to wear a mask. I didn't know it was an outdoor event as well, too. Like shit.
It was an outdoor event.
But then like I remember my buddy telling me he was jogging and he's on the opposite side of the road. A woman had crossed over to his side of the road and told him to put a fucking mask on. He was like, I would never have we wouldn't have even talked to each other. We wouldn't have
Right.
even been even 6 feet close to each other unless you came over here and sat. Now you're talking to me. So now there's more time being exchanged. And I'm like, it's just people that like you get put in a little position of power. If you are, it's why I'm so fucking weirded out by PETA, like the animal slur stuff. I'm like,
Yep.
can we get one dude in power at PETA that's like actually like, hey, let's fucking try and change the actual like some animal shit, not fucking animal crackers. I don't really care.
Right. I mean, I also think that people feel like they're in a position of power because they've been unofficially encouraged to do stuff. So now it's like, oh, I have this. It's like, oh, you don't. Last time I checked, it was just a suggestion, and you weren't actually given authority to do this. Why are you just like? I get points of I get the point of watching out for the greater community and all that, but at some points, are you actually looking out for the community, or are you just trying to have some handle on something you have no control over? So there's that fine line too.
I think it's the looks of stuff too, because I pointed this out at my work. I was like, why? Like someone told me, he's like, why do I can't wait till we never have to wear masks again. And I'm like, they really don't work. And he's like, what do you mean they don't work? And I just grabbed the fucking mask, I pulled it up over my face, put it like a little bit tight, grabbed my vape, I pulled it down,
Yep.
vaped, pulled it up, and I blew it, and it went right through my mask. And I'm like, the COVID particles are smaller than the vape smoke. So in any sense, I'm still sucking in air. I'm still getting whatever this
Right.
contact thing, unless you have one. And this has been announced in the medical when Fauci was on there. He's like, you need to get these certain types of masks. A person had looked over that and did another study. He goes, you don't actually need that one. You need a better fucking mask that suction cups your fucking face so you can't get anything in there. He goes, they're just for looks. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, maybe the flu numbers went down. I haven't seen the numbers still relatively look the same. They say they went down, but they haven't. There's just so much mixed back bullshit where I'm like, you can tell, and I've heard a couple podcasts that they talk about all the stuff that they gotten wrong, and people want to persecute them for the stuff they've done wrong. And I'm like, I feel like we passed the answer and we passed the real way of doing this way back. And we've said so much shit now that if we try and circle back to it, just go, oh, I guess we were wrong. Well, it's actually this. Back to stage one. I'm like, that's probably what it is, but they're not going to be like, hey, everything we just added on top of this was bullshit. Let's go back to what we were before. Let's go back to step one. We messed up on step 2 and 3. No, they're going to have to find a way to circle back around because that looks really bad in the eyes of the public if your government just gave you a bunch of bullshit and then fucking circles it back to the step 1.
No, it definitely does. It's definitely a bad PR move. But at that point, though, I mean, and this is the beauty of science and why scientists have some more liberty than other professions. So like we had a hypothesis, we thought it worked, it didn't. Further studies show this, and that's the way science works. But people don't want to have people don't they get content with their point of view or their mindset or what facts they know. And when that's challenged, it's no, actually, that's not how that works because you said this and I took that that's what I was taught. So therefore, I'm not changing or reworking my brain. So, and that's weird because science is meant to be, science and history and math a little bit. They have that flexibility to change as new information is brought to light. So,
Well, here's where I get a little intense about it is where people don't want to be wrong because after a while, you being wrong so many times, people are going to stop listening to what you're fucking saying.
right.
And if you look at academia, for instance, Avi Loeb, who was on a Joe Rogan podcast that talked about that asteroid that was in the sky, was not an asteroid or a comet. It was something, a sign of extraterrestrial life. I think we all know about it, is that long pencil shaped asteroid. Now, I've talked to a few people involved in heavily in academia. Not only are they having issues with the school, but also issues with people that want to say that you're wrong and not listen to you and say that you're a liar and make up lies about you in fear that whatever they created as research is now going to be deemed wrong and now they're going to lose 20 years of work. If you're a person working on a case study and someone else is working on the same case study as you but working on a different thing and theirs is published and then you find out yours is the correct one and you publish yours, that person that spent 20 something years doing their study is now doesn't even fucking matter, gets thrown out the window. That's 20 years of work, 20 years. And that now becomes a game. Same thing with our court systems, with lawyers and things of this sort. It's a fucking game. That's the issue, is that we're not looking to better in science. We're not looking to better in research. We're looking at who's going to get their name published. And when the scientist starts thinking of, let's just benefit the human race. Instead, they want to get their name on attached to something and be remembered through history. Now here's the issue, because now we're only shooting ourselves in the foot, because now everything that's ever been created is being looked at over and over and over and over again, and we're not progressing anything. We're only going 2 steps back every single time, which is like, I feel like right now we're in a state of lull. The most important fucking thing in our fucking science or anything that's happened right now is we're going to be able to have a hotel on the moon or on Mars. It's like, who gives a fuck? Our fucking Earth is dying. Well, we're going to be able to live on another planet. Fucking wonderful. How much is it for a spaceship ticket? Well, this woman paid 4.5 billion to get on the space shuttle. It's like,
Cool.
so
So only the elite get to go up. Awesome.
fucking terrific. I would love, who has $4.5 billion just sitting in their fucking wallet?
I don't. And if they do, can you give me some?
Like fucking invest in Bitcoin or GameStop stock.
I think that the GameStop stock has gone down again. I don't check the market that often.
I just see it when it's trending on Twitter. I'm like, haha.
You're back.
You're back. Welcome back to the show. It's crazy because like it just shows you like what do you feel like, because I always mention this a little bit, is like, do you feel like your thoughts are your own thoughts, or they thoughts that have been morphed by society and you just don't know it yet? This is just how you think now. Like I try and think of like, what's the Robbie thought? Like, for instance, my thought right now to you would be like something about like, if my thoughts are my own, why I could take this conversation to a matter of like, let's talk about the environment, for instance. Why is there this? And I could just give an example. But then there's this one thought that comes into my head is like, if you lift your leg up at a different angle than having it just standing straight up and you fart, your fart is going to sound different. That's a Robbie thought. That's not a society or a conversation thought. So I want you to look inside of yourself and wonder that those little thoughts where you go, I don't want to say this in public. Are those your own thoughts? And then the other thoughts that you have that you act upon, are they thoughts that are influenced you on society, which really makes you question on what you're doing in your life? Is it influence to you, or is it something that you actually want to do? I think that was a very big thing for people to find during the pandemic, was to be able to look inside themselves. But how many people can sort through all that propaganda and all that brainwashing type things just on a basis of, you got to be a doctor, you got to be this because it's going to get you a good job, rather than building furniture or living with the Amish? Maybe you want to do the Amish thing, but you haven't been told that that's a successful way of being, such as society right now. Everything is telling you fame is the way you want to fucking go. But I think we can all notice through the examples and the clear evidence, that's a horrible way to go, because you're under fire 24/7. I can't get canceled because my show isn't big enough, and I'm happy with that.
No, I think it's always a mix of what society thought is and what your own thought is. It's like you hear something from society and then you think on it, it's like, does that actually make sense for me? No, that doesn't. I don't want, like, I don't want to be a social media personality or anything like that. If my one goal is to live in like Costa Rica or like somewhere in Sweden doing backwards like environmental work and seeing how it's changed or live among people, like that's my dream goal. Um, and that's wholly me. Um,
Why Sweden?
I would love to see one a fjord. Just fjords are just absolutely. Have you seen a fjord?
The fuck's a few? I think you. No, you mentioned last time some type of anteater thing.
Tamadua. That's what I mentioned last time.
You sent me a picture of it.
I did because I love those little sneakers. I'm gonna find one. Hold on.
You can't show me it.
I was gonna copy and paste it and put in the chat so you can at least see it that way.
Okay, that makes sense. I don't know too much about technology.
I've been living on Zoom through student teaching and through the last like 4 years of my life. The last year it feels like 4 years.
Congratulations on moving on to something different.
Thank you. Now I graduate next week, and then I have.
You said getting a real job. I was like, isn't educating our youth a real job? I give anybody anything to be. I can't click that. It's going to put me into a different link.
Okay, never mind then. I'll post
Well,
in
I clicked it. So now we're going to fucking watch my computer have a seizure. It says what is fjord, but it looks like what is Ford. And I'm like, if you don't know what fucking Ford is, then you don't know what I'm up. Here we go. You see how my face lit up?
Yep.
That's how slow my computer is. If anybody listening to oh my God, that's beautiful.
Right?
So right now, people that are listening, I'm looking at like, it looks like the Grand Canyon before it looks like the Grand Canyon, as in like,
Yep.
it still has the giant crater where if you fall, you're probably dead.
But it has all the vegetation and all
Yeah.
that.
That looks like what when you say this water's made from the glaciers. It's like, yeah, that's where it fucking comes from.
Yeah. No, so student teaching is the last leg of getting my degree. So I'm finishing up my secondary education degree right now. So once I get that, I'll be certified to teach in Rhode Island secondary education. So anything from middle school and high school. So the second part now is finding an adult job.
Wait, you're from Rhode Island?
Yes.
I've talked to everybody in every single state now. I didn't even notice that. I'm trying, like, I put
Well,
up one of those world maps and I'm like, I've
yep.
talked to everybody from like everywhere but Korea. And because they don't
Yeah.
have Zoom over there.
North or south. Because if you say north, there's a different reason for that.
Well, that's because they ban everything. Like they ban
Yeah.
TikTok and they ban Twitter.
No, didn't you have someone from Rhode Island, or at least a guest that went to URI?
I can't tell you the name of every place that people tell me they're from. I can tell you if I have to go through all my thing.
I think it was because it was during the underwater archaeologist who enlightened you to the whole Titanic.
Jessica, she's from Rhode Island.
Well, she went to URI, I think, which is the University of Rhode Island.
I've been to Hawaii, but I'm not from there. I can't say that.
Fair enough.
I gotta be physically in that spot when I do the Zoom calls. That means I'm being there through Zoom. It's like when people hold a photo. I was technically there because I'm enjoying it. Just like you never went to
never
fucking
been there.
Cancun. You didn't experience drinking a Mai Tai on the beaches of Normandy. I don't know. It's all I don't know, man. It's crazy because if that's your dream to study that now it's the fjord.
Fjords, yeah.
Why specifically that?
It looks beautiful, one, and two, especially during the Middle Ages and the Scandinavian time period when they were going through collecting resources and all that. All these areas have stayed almost the same. So it's just wondering, okay, so what sort of was there something within their culture that was somewhat environmental for these areas to stand still? Was it just like the connection? Like, is there a personal or empathetic connection that these people have that haven't led them to tear it down? So just crazy stuff.
It's interesting. I don't know if I thought about when I wanted to travel, and then obviously I have to wait till travel gets lifted, but I wanted to visit a lot of places where people I podcasted with, and then just like meet in person, take me around for like a week, just spend a week in each place, see how far that would get me. But man, I have no clue what I honestly want to do. I really would honestly enjoy, probably if I was going to travel, I would love to see ancient Greece. I know that's like been my big thing for a long time because I'm a Greek
Sure.
mythology nut. So I would like to see that. But unless we can go back in time to when it was actually a cool thing to be in ancient Greece, I don't know.
Well, I mean, if you go back in time, make sure your immune system's pumped up. There's gonna be some other different diseases back then.
Pretty
That's
sure we're
not,
probably still dealing with the same stuff. It just has a new name.
possibly. I mean, it's like the Black Death. That's changed over time. It's not the same as one. If you go back in time to the Middle Ages, it'll be vastly different than what we have now.
What do you think's easier, or at least possible, in the next 100 years? Do you think it's time travel, or do you think it's going to be colonization on another planet?
With the way our Earth is going, I'll be happy if we survive another 100 years without having a major war. But between those two, it'll probably be going to a different planet.
Well, the next world war is probably going to happen in this year. So
Don't say that.
it fucking Korea already made a threat towards us. So we're kind of screwed over in that aspect.
But when is Korea not making a threat towards us, though?
Well, when our president, I'm not even going to say his, I'm
Yes,
not,
I know which president you're referencing.
okay, he happened to say something where it was like, I understand why he hadn't made his inaugurational speech or whatever that everybody was expecting him to make. Because
Yep,
apparently that's what every president does. And then they had fact checkers check it. I was like, they don't want him to talk at all. Like they want to reduce the
right.
stage time as much as possible. He happened to say that he was going to take down Korea, or he was going to show them who's boss, something ridiculous of that
Yep,
scale, trying to sound tough. And then Kim Jong Un's like, we're done with America. And signs of war, my friend. And I'm like, how are you going to fucking clean up this disaster mess? Like, we worried about oil spills. And why
right.
can't we just worry about oil spills? Why do we always got to fucking. And I'm upset because, so we're ending the war in Afghanistan. That's not why I'm upset.
Ending.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He said we're going to end it, or we're going to pull out on 9/11. And I'm like, we could be out of it now, but you're going to choose 9/11 because it's some great homage to 9/11. And I'm like, fuck, man. I want to. It's so stupid. I just look at it like we've
You
been
know, they keep saying we're gonna pull out, we're gonna pull out, we're gonna pull out, and then
come
this,
right on the back.
yep,
It's
this
terrible.
they still keep them there. So it's like, all right, you don't say you're gonna pull everyone back if you're not actually gonna do it.
Well,
Please own up to your word.
they're going to keep some people obviously there, but it's, I mean, that's not different from any other country would do the same shit. We have in our Congress right now, we have spies. There's a Josh Rogan podcast on Joe Rogan. They have the same last name. Dude, I've been so infatuated with this episode. I've talked about it a couple times now, but it's all about, like, he's a journalist for like just he studies all of Japan, everything. He talks so much about spies that are involved in Congress, people that, like, it's a Russian dude with a belt under, like, just below his nipples. His pants are so high up, and he's like, "Hey, funny meeting you here at this bar. Let's get a drink." And it's like he talks about all of that. He talks about the COVID conspiracies, everything that's came out with it all, that how we're so far past what the truth is because of now how it looks, that we have to find a way to circle back around, like I was talking about in the beginning.
Yep.
He lays out so much evidence and shit that they're looking up, and it's all fucking true. And they talk about there's that animal, the penguin or whatever it's called, the penguin.
Pangolin.
Pangolin, that's what it is. They talk about how, like, there's a theory that that thing spread somehow and that's where the COVID originated from, that they're now searching into. And then there's a popsicle theory, which they're talking about it came from a cold food truck, that the COVID came from some type of cold food storage. So now they have to search every single truck and every single cold food storage facility, which is just busy work. It's just, it's going to take 100-something years to be able to track down every food that's been made from the COVID labs for the frozen food things and be able to, it's just going to send us on a fucking witch hunt. And it's all because the optics of how things look. That's the craziest thing, is that about being right doesn't matter. It's about, how does this make me look? Because in some way, America and in some way, China is also involved in the COVID leak, in the whole incident of how it happened. Nobody wants to get down to the true thought of it. And this is what he was saying, is because it's going to impact it's going to make someone look really fucking bad. And he goes, the way that we're thinking of it is, you got to make sure you wear a mask to protect your grandma and protect the people around you. That's what we've been told. We're more about caring about the people. He talked about how Japan and China are looking at it as, there's over 550,000 people that have died from this fucking virus. That's each casket has a lawyer. That's a different way of thinking about
Yeah.
it when you really put the grand aspects. They're prioritizing that. That's why if you talk about TikTok being banned, Twitter being banned, all these things in Korea that are being banned, they're banned in China as well too. Did you know Clubhouse and TikTok are China apps? Did you know for the first 6 weeks, TikTok and was it Clubhouse was or no first 6 weeks Clubhouse came out. It was it was not banned in China, and a bunch of people were communicating with other people from other countries, and that's when they banned it. Was like, oh fuck, like we've told. They were getting other influences into their head. They were
Right.
communicating with us, which isn't bad. But this is why everyone's so mad at Trump, because it sparked a lot of this horrible shit with Asian hate. It sparked a lot of conspiracy theories towards this. That's not that wasn't that wasn't should never have gotten to that point. That's horrible. It's not.
Right.
Asian people are good people. We should be communicating with every race. It's whatever. But the finding the truth when it comes to this lab scenario, or if it got released from whatever, is so far out of the realm of possibility, because it's now racist to even suggest that it came from a lab where they have been known to been experimenting with things. We got a fucking Trump got a call in February or was it February and March or in March, where he said that it don't worry about it. It loses traction in warm weather. And then Trump came on air and said, don't worry about the COVID virus, vitamin D, all these types of things. I've talked to scientists and it gets exposed in warm weather. He wasn't talking about scientists. He was talking about his friend Xi Jinping that he's been known to eat chocolate fucking cake with. And turns out they weren't fucking friends. I'm like, it's so hard to find the fucking truth, because now you've gotten so much information piled on top of you that's all been known as to be wrong, where it's
Right.
like, just fucking go back to, if you were wrong and you created all this as bullshit, doesn't fucking
Yo,
matter.
my
Let's
bad.
not worry about that. Yeah.
Right. My bad. But I mean, also there were labs in the U.S. that also had COVID too. I was reading a book, a zoonotic book. That's what COVID is. COVID is a zoonotic disease. Um, I was reading a zoonotic book, and it talked about COVID, and this is before 2020. This book came out like 2017, 2018. And it talks about different ones, and one of them is COVID. And it talks about, the bat, and then how it was transported in the US to various labs to be studied. So the US already had COVID facilities already on. So it's not.
It wasn't
So,
just them. That's where they're saying the exposure came from, was from that. Like
right.
ours did not expose people to it. It was from somewhere else that it came over here, which isn't it. I wouldn't call that racist. I don't call that wrong
No.
information. I consider that the fact that we're not pursuing what that could be, but we're pursuing every single frozen food factory and every single
Right.
popsicle truck and shit as the weirdest fucking one to go after, rather than focus on that one that seems to be like most plausible in a lot of people's minds. But when it comes to, like, for instance, I have a lot of issues with school districts right now,
Yep.
mostly, especially Harvard and colleges, because I started to realize with a podcast with Brett Weinstein, where he talked about how Harvard would pull your funding to your research studies or your PhD thesis if it didn't fit their narrative. Since they're funding you, they can just pull the plug at any minute. Well, now Harvard and all these types of schools that are being published saying like, this is horrible, all these types of acts that they seem like they're picking like sides. Like it comes to
Yep.
political leaders, they would start saying this political leader sucks and this one's amazing, vote for this one, especially during the election. You're like, why the fuck is that happening? Well, this journalist on the Joe Rogan podcast talks about how like it's not going to be a hot war is the worst thing to happen. That's fucking
Yes.
actual guns and shit. But how it's going to be one is with a Cold War, where they start buying up pieces of space. We keep businesses in China for optics, for looks, for like, hey, we're over here too, just so we can stay in touch. Just like how I would maybe text you every now and
Sure.
again, just to be able to, we're still in touch. We're still friends, but
Right.
we're in touch. That's what we do with our corporations. So what China's doing now is they're starting to buy up properties of education, like certain school districts and certain giant colleges. And now they're pushing these narratives where they're pulling funding out of things that could be offensive to them, because now they have a say in stuff. Same thing with our Congress. We keep a board member that might be from China or a delegate over there. So they still have a say. So there's still an optic of how they are looking there. It's so fucking weird, where I'm like, am I watching another stage of reality television? Like once you really start learning about this shit, it's so much stuff that you're not even considering. Like I'm like, What the? I feel so out of the loop on so much shit.
Right. I mean, in education is always changing, and colleges should be an area where people can freely express what they want to think or publish what they want, no matter how. Because I might post something and it might be crazy, and then you have someone come by and refute it. I mean, that's how education is supposed to work in general. Is all right. Here's one perspective of things. Here's a different perspective of things. Let's figure out which part actually, like, what the middle ground is. That way, we're showing every piece of it. And most colleges don't want to do that. It's like, all right, well, yeah, this doesn't particularly fit our narrative, but it's close enough where we'll allow this just to keep some things at bay.
Well,
But
you're the best person to have on this podcast for this. I know this isn't your field of this isn't your area of expertise, but like just like you did our first episode, you can Google the shit I'm saying. Google this right fucking now, or DuckDuckGo it. I don't care.
DuckDuckGo it. What's that?
So it's another search browser site that doesn't sell your information like Google does. Google hides your analytics. The reason why Google's banned in Australia and it was getting banned in a bunch of places is because they not only do they sell your information, but they also hide search results based on who their partnerships are, like Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, on Twitter, for instance. Whoever owns Twitter, they were banning the result of the Hunter Biden laptop thing. You couldn't find anything about that, even though it's real shit, because he was a Biden supporter and he didn't want it to affect the election.
Right.
Same thing. Google does that with a lot of search results shit where you have to look through pages upon pages. Nobody's going to the 10th or 11th page in. They're going to the first, or they're going to the last, or the second one in, maybe. So if you search up a boat of hair that was sent over here, human hair from China or wherever that was sent here, and we ended up sending it back because we found out where the hair came from. Is there any results on that?
I put boat of hair.
It's like 15,000 pounds of hair or some shit like that. Something ridiculous.
Naglfar, the boat itself has been connected by scholars with a large pattern of ritual hair and nail among Indo-Europeans. That's from Wikipedia. Physics 3D print a boat that could sail down a human hair.
No, look up Trump denies boat of human hair sent here from, and then just put sent here from. It should fill in the rest. But there was a giant boat that Trump sent away that was sent over here from China or some other place with human hair on it that was coming from labor camp in one of these places where they were capturing people, and they were basically shaving their head and having them work in these things because they were doing things that were against the government. Now, Trump sent this away once they found out where the hair came from, but this hair was sent over here to make wigs and shit. But people went, where the fuck is this hair coming from? And realized that these people weren't giving the human hair out of their free will. They were donating it because they were getting shaved off their head forcibly. If you got to, I'll fucking Google it too. Hang on a
second. I'm looking for it, but I'm not. I'm seeing Ivanka and Jordan go boating with their children and is from MSN. Did Trump refuse to visit war cemeteries because soldiers? I see that one. A second one. Donald Trump's ex-wife Ivanka disavows. It's number 3. Donald J. Trump official site reports he called U.S. members. Early denies a report that Atlantic that he did not like U.S. service members. President Trump's hair meets stiff wind.
Does that sound anything like I just described?
No, it doesn't.
But that one does sound interesting. His hair meeting stiff wind. That's funny as shit.
Voodoo priest arrested by FBI after buying a lock.
We're doing a hair pause. I unpaused it. We found it. Look, you just heard it when I played it on the thing.
Yeah.
I can't play the Joe Rogan episode, people, but if anybody wants to look it up, it's number 1640 called Josh Rogan. I've listened to this one hundreds of times. Now, he just found the article, so now you can confirm what I'm saying in a way better way than me just saying, they're sending human hair. It's like Alex Jones. They're making the frogs gay.
That's your favorite thing to say right now, isn't it?
What?
It sounds like you throw that in at least once an episode.
What, the frog thing?
Yeah.
Because he was right. They do technically have a chemical that changes. He said it in a great way. All right. Read what you just found.
So this is from CBS News. Hair weavers from Chinese prison camps seized by U.S. Customs.
Okay.
Federal authorities in New York on Wednesday, and to be clear, this is from July 3rd, 2020. Federal authorities in New York on Wednesday seized the shipment of weaves and other beauty accessories suspected to be made out of human hair taken from people locked inside a Chinese internment camp. U.S. Customs and Border Protection officials told the Associated Press that 13 tons of hair products worth an estimated $800,000 were in the shipment. 800K for hair? That's
All right, let's just clarify. I was wrong. It wasn't 15,000. It was 13 tons. I'm sorry.
The production of these goods constitutes a very serious human rights violation, and the detention order is intended to send a clear and direct message to all entities seeking to do business with the United States that illicit and inhuman practices will not be tolerated in U.S. supply chains. And
Now,
that came from Brenda Smith.
Now we sent that hair back. We did not, we seized it, but it got sent back. We did not take it and we did not use it. We did not do anything. We wiped our hands with this. And this is like this with anything that happens with a place like China or another place where this is coming from that has a superior power like this. And we have such connections with. We do not do anything to fix this. We wipe our hands with it. Now, this is different when you look at Afghanistan and our influence over there. When there's a smaller region that we have more power than, but when we have a power like this that is matched with us or better than us or bigger than us, or we have deep connections with, we wipe our hands with it and do not get involved. That is what I was trying to prove with this, is that there's ties. This happened with the same thing with the NBA. I don't know if you remember a couple years ago, but it was being banned in China and all these places. The NBA was. It was a big thing because one dude sent out a tweet, and this tweet happened to be offensive, and it happened to get tied to the NBA. Now,
I remember this, yeah.
Nike, or I don't know if it was the NBA themselves, had to do a lot of shit to be able to recover this. But someone, either Nike or Adidas or something, asked them, "Hey, I just want to know, are our shoes being made in a slave camp or a sweatshop or anything?" And they pulled the plug on them too, because then they were like, "Are you insinuating that we make you're racist?" And then they pulled the plug, and it was like, no, we're wondering why we're charging so much for shoes when the cost of labor to actually receive the product is way lower than what we're selling it for.
Right.
So how much are you paying the people to work there? It doesn't seem like enough when we're getting so much of a shipment. Are you paying people below wages? And they wouldn't answer that question. They considered it racist. So when something like this that is actually important, when it does offer a human rights violation, much like the shipment of hair, it's considered racist, or it's considered act of war, or it breaks tension between the countries when you're not getting the truth out, which you can't even explore. You just have to be like, okay, we'll do what you say. We'll do what you're saying.
Well, this aggravates me more because this is you,
It's
Gary.
real though. I'm fucking
Right.
right.
No, it is. No, it's real. So the Ugaris, and this has been proven by satellite imagery in the area, which are Chinese Muslims, are being thrown into detention camps by the Chinese because they're Muslim, and they're being sent into re-education camps. Now, China's come out with some good, positive things about it for their media, but these camps were created in a year, and I'm not talking like small, like little box things. I'm talking huge compounds that's just filled with Chinese citizens, and it's a human rights violation because you're being persecuted because of your religion. Get out of here. That's a human rights violation. I mean, it's the same as Hitler discriminating against Jews, Catholics, and everyone else that wasn't in his viewpoint. So it's the same exact thing. We call genocide on that one, and we call human rights violation on that one, and then we have the same exact scenario, and we're kind of just the UN. Everyone's just like, we won't touch it.
You know why I'm smiling right now, right?
Because you're right.
Because I feel like Chicken Little, and everyone finally sees the sky is falling. You did not know that. It sounds like bullshit when I was explaining it to you, and then you looked it up and you found it.
Well, I didn't know about the hair thing, but I knew about the camps. That part I know I knew about because, was it 2 years ago? As I had that class. A couple of years ago, I was taking a geography class with one of my favorite professors of all time. And this was one of our news articles because it related to geography and people geography. And this was when it started first coming out of China that this was actually going on. So we talked about it, and I just read I read it. I looked at the images of the camp being erected, and some of the testimonies that were coming out, I'm like, this is ridiculous. Why are they able to get away with this? This is a human rights violation, the exact definition of human rights violation. And that's what's happening here. And why isn't the world community doing anything? Oh, that's right, because they're supposedly sending money to Africa to develop them, even though they're spying on Africans while they're trying to develop. But hey, that's China's China. So I knew about the camps. I just didn't know about the hair part. So, but
Fucking nuts, man. It's like you want to fix the world, but why don't we fix this shit too? This is what's causing the world to be this nonstop engine of destroying everything. You can't even care about the people around you, let alone the place that you stand on, that you fucking live on, that you eat off of, that you fucking everything. You fuck on this earth. You literally, this thing is around you 24/7. You can
right,
never get privacy when you're jacking off alone, when you're doing whatever, when you're wiping your fucking ass. This thing is there. It's not, you can't care about that if you can't care about your common man. It's the biggest fucking issue in my mind right now. And I'm so happy you fucking looked that up because just seeing your face being like, oh, I found the article. I'm like, fucking, it felt like Darth Vader choking somebody and just get all the fucking life got sucked out of me. But it's fucking nuts, man, because you can't care about the people around you. Your people are. My biggest example of this is the $850 million that got tossed out to Belasio's wife, um, to be able to use for mental health program in New York that I've been talking about, and it's fucking gone. And people are like, "Yep, that's what happens. It's corruption." That's not a good
oh,
answer. That's not a good answer at all. That is a what the fuck did you just say? When did corruption become normalized? That is not something that should be normal, especially when something is funding something as important as that. The homeless population, there's $400 million that got sent to the homeless population. Now, if you give each one of those homeless people $10,000, $100,000, you could end the homeless population down there
right,
if you just gave them that money, but you didn't. The money got lost. Where did the fuck the money go? Where's the money, Lebowski? Where's the fucking money, Lebowski? I start getting upset because
yeah,
that you want to talk about. That's my trigger button. Is when you start looking at people that feel like they're smart enough, that feel like they have more power to be able just to. When we talk about the currency, when you're worth that digital dollar, who's to be that person that says, I'm going to fuck you today and just pull all your money out and make you zero? Why do you get to redeem and why do you get to qualify and take away everything I've worked for and make me worth zero? I am only worth zero when I say I'm worth zero. To
right.
everyone, I'm worth one thing. Why are you able to control what I'm worth? And that's what I don't like. And people should be more upset about it, like I am, because it's people rigging the system and cheating the game because they can. And I don't think that's a way to prosper.
No, and this goes all the way back to that point about empathy, right? The reason why these things happen is
Crush somebody's head open, like the Bjorn Thorson from fucking Game of Thrones, where he pops the dude's head.
that dude. That dude can lift some weight. Do you
I'm
see?
related to him.
You're related to him?
Yeah, he's like one of like a third cousin or something like that.
Hmm. Can you
I,
get whatever supplements that he has and
I'm
bring
kidding.
them?
No, I'm not related to him. I'm related to the Robertsons from Duck Dynasty, which I don't really give a shit about. I don't hunt.
Are you saying you can inherit a massive amount of
Duck
duck
calls.
money?
Duck calls. No, I'm not related to them either, but we have the same last name, so I'm sticking to it.
But no,
I've
going
had
back to that,
family historians on. They're like, I don't know. Do you want me to track your DNA thing? I was like, no, because I like just going around saying I'm related and I'm not.
I like just making up some of these things.
But
But that's
the hair thing is true.
yes, the hair thing is true. But no, it goes back to that empathy point, right? When humans disconnect from other humans and don't have that empathy, it allows them to do these things. It allows them to steal all this money and not give it to where it's needed because there's not that empathy connection there.
I'm
And
I'm hoping this podcast makes one person stop their car and get out and go Kramer through their hair, like, what the fuck? Like looking up at
what
the
I just listened
sky.
to.
What did I just hear? What did some kid in a podcast fucking mention that is true?
But no, it's that empathy point, man. I mean, and that's what as soon as we can create more empathy and have people develop a deeper meaning with other people, it will help stop some of these atrocities from happening. It comes down to that empathy point. But as long as people are allowed to remain in power who don't actually care or are allowed to promote their own agenda or grow their own personal finances off other people, while they're there, we're not going to develop that actual empathy between actual public officials and the people they represent. So it's just empathy needs to be taught in school in one way or another.
Can't wait till you do an episode on your podcast about what I just told you. Be like, so this fucking dude was telling me all this. And I'm gonna hear
Yo,
that. I'm gonna hear that.
if that happens, it's not happening this year. We have everything figured out for this year. I could put it in the notes for next year's, but
Did you plan it already a full year out? I don't even see what that
so our
that's
so because
your release time has to be like once a month or some shit
it
because
is
I can't
100% is.
I can't plan my shit like that. I'll be like, oh, that's for next year. That means I have fucking 300 other recordings ahead of this one there. I'm like, this is for next year.
Yeah, no. So all of we do our stuff monthly. So the last month's episode, which is Earth Day, now we're going to be doing May next week. Yes, because it's after I graduate. So yeah, next week we'll record our next episode, which is on Jamestown, and then we'll do a July episode, August, September. So we'll only do them out once a month. We'll record and send it out to the internet to be evaluated. But
And you already got your whole year planned?
yep. And we've already started working on next year's sort of.
What happens if they find Bigfoot next month? Then are you going to add that in?
I might have to take out one of my episodes, which I don't know which one I would take out because.
Wait, you're pre-recorded already?
No, we're not pre-recorded.
I'm
No,
about to
so
say.
it would have to be one of my episodes. So every host does an episode. So like Lauren does an episode, Maria does an episode, Derek does one, and I do one. So we plan around that. So like each host is responsible for different, like not segments, but different months. So I have 3 or 4 episodes I think queued up. So I have to take one of those away and replace it with Bigfoot.
Yeah, you can replace 4 of them with Bigfoot. Imagine like it's like next year someone lost their arm last year, and your next year episode. Well, we
Get
talk
to
about
it.
he loses an arm. It's like that was a fucking year ago. I already had time to grieve and shit.
Yo. Well, I mean, next year, I know next year we got some pretty this year we're talking about Hungary, we're talking about some other areas this year, like all past events, but different countries this time around. It's not just going to be US and Western Europe focused, thankfully.
Your mission is to get those other people on my podcast.
I've already I told them that you're interested. Lauren said that she's thinking about it. She might reach out. I said, give him a couple of listens and then reach out to him. So
you don't give them a chance. You say, go on this guy's show and he's going to blow your mind with statistical facts about hair being sent over from another country.
You're just riding that high, aren't you?
I feel like someone just told me I have the cure to cancer or something like that. And I'm just like, I can profit so much. I'm going to charge every motherfucker.
And to make it even better, this came from CBS, so it's kind of a regular news station, mainstream. And
I'll say when you say CBS, I'm like, damn it. It's like when someone at my work goes, I want to watch Fox. And you're like, really, Fox? And then it's like, I feel the same way about all news networks where I'm like, I watch ABC and they have the show The View. And I'm just like, I fucking hate this show. Like she said, she called a woman a bitch. And I was like, really? On fucking TV? And then they point to a Minnesota mom who's like, my children are growing up in a world of masks. And I'm like, why would you call her a bitch for saying that? She's saying how she feels. And even all of her co-hosts were like, I wouldn't call her a bitch. And she's like, maybe it's a bad term. But there's fucking television shows, networks that are getting their people vaccinated on air as like a push for the vaccine to be like, get your vaccinations. I got mine on air. And they're getting a large sum of money where I'm like, what you're not leaving any room for these conspiracy theory people to be wrong. You're now offering incentive to get the vaccine. And I'm like, now you got to pay me to get it. Now I'm fucking curious to why you got to pay me $800 to get a vaccine. I'm like, good fucking job. You made that weird.
I got mine.
You're dying, aren't you?
I'm not dying. I felt fine. Actually, the day after I got it, I know everyone's like, oh, the day after, like, take time out, student teaching, whatever. I felt fine. I was
got a dud.
I got my Gatorade. I got my Tylenol just in case anything happens. But right now in one of the cities, there's a pizza place. And if you bring proof that you've been vaccinated, they'll give you a free slice of pizza. I'm like, yes, I want free pizza, but that's the reason why you get free pizza.
America. That's why.
It's
America.
like
When they offer a nice Krispy Kreme glazed donut, you're more than happy to get a shot in your fucking
it's
arm.
it's like when you go to Planet Fitness and they say, "Oh, well, if you come, it's free pizza Wednesday, Monday, and bagel Friday." It's like, what's the point? What's the point of going then?
And push that extra hour on the treadmill. God damn it.
Like,
All
I
right.
hope I'm not mocking where you work because I know you work in the fitness industry, and
I
I
work
just
at not a Planet Fitness, thank God. Planet Fitness is a place that they talk about in my work where it's like, if you really want to try steroids, which I'm like, I'm not attest to that. You know what? I've been working out and looking the same for like the longest time. So I'm like, fuck it. I'm fine with the 6-pack. But if you're telling me I can get like bulk traps where it looks like someone shoved a golf ball or a football under my neck, fuck yeah, I'll take steroids. Sounds fucking awesome. That's all I got.
that's all you got. All right.
All right. Well, where can people find you at, brother?
So they can find me currently on Twitter at historian Tibbs. And then you can also follow Operation Hist on Twitter. That's the podcast I'm a part of. You can find it on any major streaming platform. We're on Apple, Spotify. It's Operation History. We have a
His-
WordPress. We have a WordPress too now, which is weird, but I digress.
I thought about making blogs at one point. I think on my site I have a couple blogs. I got really fucking bored with it. I was like, damn, you got to write this shit out.
So
Ah,
we have like a brief bio of all of us, and then every episode's linked in there too, along with the sources we use. So that's what we primarily use it for.
why can't you just put up a good bagel recipe?
I mean, I'd be putting up recipes, but it's not for bagels. It would be for things like shepherd's pie and things like that.
Fuck yeah, I love a good shepherd's pie. A good shepherd's pie. I like the sound a spoon makes when it enters macaroni and cheese, like a fresh bowl.
Mm,
Like on Thanksgiving, I don't eat the macaroni and cheese. When people make it, I need to be there to when the spoon goes in, so I can just hear the sound, and I'm like, all right, that's all I wanted.
yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. I'll make sure I link it all in the description. It's getting a little bit awkward. Thanks for listening, everybody.